All right, folks, let's get into it. Something has clearly gone sideways for Washington in Iran. In the past, we'd say that carefully. You know, maybe there's a master plan behind all this. But at this point, we can just say it plainly. Things have gone off the rails. Despite eliminating Khamenei, the sky didn't fall. Government institutions are still running. There was no total collapse, no system meltdown. The Islamic Republic reshuffled its leadership almost overnight and is now publicly vowing to fight for months, possibly years. Sure, you might call that a bluff. Maybe they can't actually sustain a prolonged war. But here's the thing, when you look at their posture, it doesn't read like a bluff. It reads like resolve, and the harder they're pushed, and by pushed, I mean relentlessly bombed, the louder they get. We're not surrendering, not a chance. No compromise, nothing. Bluff or not, Washington's playbook has clearly hit a wall. Nearly every bold foreign policy statement Trump, Vance, Rubio, and the rest made over the past year is now circling back like a boomerang. What I'd call a memory pill moment. You watch old footage and suddenly everything clicks. I remember coining that phrase actually. You watch a clip and you're just like, whoa, it all comes back. So let's recall how Donald kept lecturing everyone that the Ukraine war was Biden's war, even though Biden didn't actually start it, and that it would have taken nothing but political willpower to end it. Now look, he dove headfirst into his own war. Whether it was hawkish senators or Israel's leadership nudging him, he made the call himself. Why? Because he was riding high after Venezuela. And Venezuela was genuinely impressive, no question. A clean, decisive operation, the kind of thing that sticks in people's minds. The parallels to Crimea are obvious: fast, surgical, no prolonged engagement. A lightning move that delivered results before anyone could react. If he'd stopped there, that win would have been the headline forever. But instead, fueled by that momentum, he pushed further. In the early days of the Iran campaign, the rhetoric was pure fire. He was calling on the Islamic Revolutionary Guard to disarm or face total annihilation. He said he was willing to accept casualties for the sake of the future. He justified launching the operation by citing supposed Iranian missile threats against U.S. assets, claims his own intelligence apparatus quietly contradicted. We pointed out at the time, find 10 differences between this and how February 2022 started. Trump was almost giddy when confirmation came in that the supreme leader had been eliminated, and everyone sort of glossed over the fact that the last time one recognized state directly killed the head of another was arguably 1979, when the Soviet Union moved into Afghanistan. In Iraq? That was different. They worked through proxies. It wasn't us, it was the locals. They put him on trial. That's on them. But this? This was direct, no intermediary. And in doing so, Trump cracked open a box that had been sealed by an unwritten rule among nations. You don't do that. When the first casualty reports started emerging, when oil prices spiked because of the de facto blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and financial markets went into a panic, an uncomfortable truth began surfacing. A big war is not a movie, and it's certainly not a short film. In a real war, you need to know what's the plan. Not just plan A, what's plan B? Look at Israel and Gaza. They had a strategy, they know how to fight, and it still required leveling an entire territory just to account for hostage recovery. That's Israel, arguably one of the most battle-hardened militaries on the planet. And here we are, watching what looks like a shock and awe campaign launched without a political exit ramp. With Iran, there's a real sense that no one planned past the first move. The assumption seemed to be decapitate the leadership, create a power vacuum, and what exactly? Who fills it? There was no one ready. Either the streets rise up with a White House blessing, which would look like a post-Maidan situation or a repeat of Chile, or competing factions tear the country apart like Libya after Gaddafi. To avoid that, you'd need to be backing a specific faction, like the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan, or the Iraqi National Congress. And even then, former allies have a history of turning on Washington. Just ask anyone who tracked post-invasion Iraq, where the same Shia groups the U.S. empowered eventually aligned with Tehran. And yes, everyone remembers what the U.S.-backed anti-Soviet warrior bin Laden eventually became. To actually protect any incoming government, you'd need boots on the ground, something like what the CSTO did in Kazakhstan. But the U.S. hasn't built a ground contingent anywhere near the region. In fact, they've been pulling back to avoid casualties. So when the decapitation strike didn't trigger regime collapse, there was no fallback, no plan B, and it's too late to draft one now. Reports out of the White House suggest decision makers massively overestimated the impact of killing the Ayatollah. They expected either a regime implosion or a Venezuela-style submission. Instead, Khamenei was replaced by his son. No uprising, no mass defection. Analysts are now saying Trump fundamentally misread Iranian culture, and the fact that the country has been militarily and psychologically preparing for exactly this kind of confrontation since the 1980s. Like the Taliban in their own way, Iran's strategy for winning is simply to outlast. They don't need to defeat the US, they just need to still be standing when Washington blinks. And Washington will blink because gas prices are climbing, and in America, gas prices are sacred ground. Some cities don't even have sidewalks, but everyone drives. When a guy in a pickup truck starts feeling it at the pump, it doesn't matter what's happening 10,000 miles away, he's paying attention. Advisors are reportedly urging Trump to develop an exit strategy. Even Vance, it turns out, was among the skeptics from early on. What this entire episode reveals is that the American hawkish establishment learned absolutely nothing from 2022. Back then, Zelensky's approval ratings were lower than Poroshenko's, and Poroshenko's negatives were staggering. Zelensky was politically irrelevant. Then came the invasion, and suddenly a guy in a tactical vest became a global symbol. People who refused to rally behind him became traitors. The same dynamic is now playing out in Iran. Everyone is uniting around the new supreme leader. You cannot compare Zelensky's political theater to an Ayatollah, but the mechanism is identical. External aggression creates internal solidarity. Trump himself admitted he boosted Canadian PM Carney's popularity through his Greenland threats. Denmark called snap elections off the back of it. This isn't unpredictable. It's textbook. And yet here we are, 10 days in, with the regime not only standing but hardening. Now the spin cycle has started. Apparently the reason they haven't hit energy infrastructure yet is because they were watching how Iran responds first. They're sinking ships, sure, but why not capturing them? The silence on that question is telling, because capturing a vessel risks American lives. Sinking it from the air is cleaner for the optics, even if it dumps oil into international waters, which no one seems particularly concerned about. Just like Ursula von der Leyen casually announced that abandoning nuclear energy was Europe's strategic mistake. Give it 2 years, and she'll be saying the same about Russian sanctions. Then coal, then firewood. The Russia-Ukraine parallel keeps surfacing, and it's apt. In the first 48 hours of February 2022, Russia could have taken out every power plant in Ukraine. There was no air defense yet, nothing protecting critical infrastructure, but they didn't, because the goal was to control, not destroy. You don't torch what you're planning to own. Russia went in expecting flowers and a handshake. Trump went into Iran expecting the same. So how does he get out of this? He can't declare victory when Iranian state television is already filming celebratory rallies. He can't just say, "mission accomplished," while Tehran throws a parade mocking him. That would be catastrophic, domestically and globally. The only card left that would end it decisively is a nuclear one. And that's not just opening Pandora's box, that's burning the entire world down. That would flip the global sanctions regime entirely. Suddenly, the international community would be sanctioning Washington. The White House statement from yesterday made one thing very clear. They're rattled and they know it. Trump personally initiated a call with Putin, apparently hoping Russia's back-channel relationships with Tehran could produce some kind of off-ramp. Think about that. You start a war, it doesn't go your way, and you call the leader of a country you've been sanctioning to ask for help saving face. That's not strength. That's a distress call dressed up in diplomatic language. Unless he's genuinely asking Russia, how do you declare a loss a win? Which honestly might be the most charitable interpretation. In response, Trump has started lifting sanctions on select countries pending stabilization, possibly permanently. Zelensky isn't going to like that. The strangest part of it all is that Trump gave completely contradictory statements to journalists within the same hour. First, he told House Republicans the U.S. had won, but that Americans wanted full victory, so more was needed. Then, minutes later at a press conference, he said the war was nearly over and Iranian forces were being systematically destroyed. The body count kept updating in real time. 46 ships destroyed became 51 by the end of the presser. When a reporter asked whether the war could end this week, Trump said, "I think soon." Another journalist reminded him that his own defense secretary said the war was just getting started. So which is it? Trump's answer, "You could say both." It reminded me of that famous Bulgakov scene. What's the best day of my life? The best day of your life is still ahead of you. Try arguing with that. You simply can't pin it down. It's clear he's frustrated the operation didn't unfold as scripted. Now he's threatening to eliminate the new supreme leader too if demands aren't met. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter if you kill 1, 2, 10, or 50 of their leaders. What matters is Iran's structural resilience and the strength of the cells it has quietly assembled abroad, particularly across Europe, where intelligence sources suggest sleeper networks have been activated and told to stand by. What they're prepared to do remains an open and dangerous question. As for the Strait of Hormuz, still not moving. Trump's answer, more strikes. Today is reportedly the biggest bombardment yet, because that always works, right? Like how bombing Ukrainian power infrastructure basically ended that war overnight. The cumulative effect, stalled war, rising gas prices, cratering poll numbers, could be a defining catastrophe, not just for Trump, but for the Republican Party broadly. Even if he signs some face-saving deal tomorrow, rebrands it as a victory, and brings troops home, Democrats will have years of material: war crimes allegations, fuel costs, abuse of executive authority, bypassing Congress on military action. The 2028 landscape is already looking treacherous. The ground is shifting under everyone's feet. After Venezuela, the smart play was to stop, bank the win, and get back to what he promised voters: fixing America from the inside. Instead, he overreached. The war continues. Iran isn't blinking, and I don't see any sign that's about to change. Stay tuned. We're watching this unfold in real time. Subscribe while you still can.